everyone, today I will be discussing about the autonomy. So when we say autonomy, what comes into our mind? It is a foundation of motivation, a connection, a mastery, purpose, and fulfillment. In developmental psychology and moral, political, and bioethical philosophy, autonomy is the capacity to make an informed or unsourced decision. Autonomous organization or institution are independent or self-governing. Kant claims that the property of the rational will is autonomy, which is the opposite of heteronomy. So when we say autonomy, it is the ability to know what morality requires of us and functions not as freedom to pursue our ends, but as the power of an agent to act on objective and universally valid rules of conduct certified by reason alone. And also, heteronomy is the condition of acting on desires which are not legislated by the reason. See an example between autonomy and heteronomy. The law says, don't steal. If you don't steal because you believe it's wrong, that's the autonomy works. But if the only reason you don't steal because you're afraid of being caught, that's an external force pressuring you, or the heteronomy. Autos, heteros, and nomos. These three Greek words are instructive, which means the self, other, and the law, respectively. Meaning to say that the ethics, as I said earlier, it is a self-governing. Autonomos is derived from Greek words autos, meaning self, and nomos, meaning law or rule. When we combine autos and nomos, we get autonomy. Heteros and nomos to heteronomy. As stated, autonomy means self-law or self-legislating, and heteronomy means other law. So, let's consider the trivial example of brushing one's teeth, which is not yet a moral dilemma but is sufficient explain the differences between autonomy and heteronomy. When you were a child, did you like to brush your teeth? As far as you can tell, children were not like to brush their teeth. But parents know that the children should to maintain oral hygiene. So, parents try to find a way to get their small children to brush their teeth before going to bed using a variety of incentives or threats of undesirable consequences. Hey Ryan, go and brush your teeth now or else your teeth will rot. Come on now, Lisa, a father tells his daughter. If you brush your teeth in 5 minutes, I will let you play your computer game tonight. So, in this case of Ryan and Lisa, are they autonomous? Certainly not, as their parents are the ones who legislate the principle that children should brush their teeth before they go to bed and impose such a principle by using threats or incentives. Now, think about the Ryan and Lisa 20 years later when they are in their mid-20s. Suppose they brush their teeth every night before they going to bed and they do without the prodding of their parents. At a certain point, perhaps when they were growing up as a teenager, they both reflected on the whole business of brushing one teeth. Both concluded that they first agree with the principle behind it, or the oral hygiene, and thus the second, every night they impose it upon themselves to brush their teeth before going to bed. So, number one, it is refers to the act of legislating principle, while the number two, it is refers the enacting of the principle. Thus, it is also to the willing of the adopted principle into reality. Are they autonomous? Yes, certainly Kant described this as follows. The will is thus not only subject to the law, but it is also subject to the law in such a way that it gives the law to itself or self-legislating, and primarily just in this way that the will can be considered the author of the law under which it is subject. The description of autonomy is unusual. When we think of someone being subject to the law, we usually think of an imposing authority figure that uses his power to control the subject into complying with his will. Imagine a policeman who apprehend a suspected criminal by forcing him on the ground and putting handcuffs on his wrists. Incidentally, subjects come from the Latin words sub and jacere, to throw. When we combine the two words, it is referred to that which is thrown or brought under something. The will must comply with the law, which is the authority figure. Surprisingly true, the will must give the law to itself. Therefore, the will is at the same time the authority figure giving the law to itself. So, how can the rational will be subordinate to that which is simultaneously its own authority figure? Isn't that contradictory to subject to the law and yet also to be the authority figure for itself? Thus, Kant described autonomy as well that is subject to a principle or a law. This apparent contradiction is entirely possible to exist, but the only self-reflexive human beings that have a rational will. Remember Ryan and Lisa and the principle of brushing one's teeth. On one hand, heteronomy is the simple legislation of imposition of a law by an external authority, or a person must brush her teeth before going to bed. Their parents are the authority figures, and the law is imposed externally by rewards or punishments. On the other hand, autonomy belongs to the grown-up and already rational Ryan and Lisa, who have adopted such a law about brushing their teeth. They regularly impose such a law on themselves out of the enactment of the will to follow the law. So the distinguishing point here is the locus of the authorship of the law. In any given scenario where a person complies with the law, we ask where the author is, whether it is external or internal. If the author of the law is external, the will is subjected to an external authority, thus heteronomous will. In contrast, if the author was the will itself imposing the law unto itself, then we describe the will as autonomous. For the 25-year-old version of Ryan and Lisa, who brushed their teeth before going to bed without any prompting from their parents, their adoption of the childhood law about toothbrushing makes the locus of the authorship internal. Thus, they are autonomous. However, the trivial actions such as brushing one's teeth can hardly be considered as moral. Real moral issues often involves action like stealing, lying, and murder, in that they have a certain gravity, insofar as those actions directly harm or benefit the well-being of person Regis case. Seen in this light is clearly a moral issue.